Welcome to the Very Good Sportscast. We are joined, well, really today is a dual Matt show, Matt and Matt in the afternoon, as Seth Murphy recommended, because today Matt Harmon joins us to talk about the Carolina Panthers offseason. Matt, how you doing?
Matt, I'm good. This is going to be fun. Two Matts going at this today. Probably feel like I'm talking to myself a little bit, but that's fine. Nothing out of the ordinary. I'm good, my man. How are you?
You know, Matt, that's good to hear. One Matt to another, I'm doing really well.
Nice. That's good, man.
So on today's show, we're going to just real quickly look at the Panthers cap situation. I mean, it's pretty solid. Free agency has kind of died down, so it's a solid number of what to expect going forward into the season. Of course, you have to figure in the rookie numbers, but solid. And then we're also going to look at the Panthers offseason additions as it is. I put a little bit of air quotes around additions, but we'll factor those in as additions. And also take a look at the NFL draft and the Panthers' needs, where they will dress them. Matt will be named the Carolina Panthers' new general manager, so he can actually help Cam Newton. And then we will talk about reception perception, which just is incredible work that Matt's doing.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot to talk about. All my favorite subjects, depending on the day with the Panthers, whether they're my favorite subject or not. And usually, not really, but we'll talk about it anyways.
Absolutely, and as an added bonus for people watching, there is going to be a movie clip in here. I'll give you a small hint. It involves a side and blind and an NFL offensive tackle who shouldn't be starting.
God, I can't believe you're gonna make me sit through this right here on the show.
Oh, I am. I've dealt through plenty of pain on the podcast involving Sacramento Kings, so now it is time to dish it out.
Well, if there's anyone that can take it, that's definitely me. So,
Excellent. So looking at the Panthers cap situation, I mean, over the cap has them right now at $10 million in cap space. One of the biggest hit against the cap right now is Charles Johnson at $20 million, and that's not going to change anytime soon. I mean, he's not a player you can obviously cut to reduce that number, so you're kind of stuck at that number. Signed Greg Olsen, 3-year, $22 million extension. That was obviously worth it. I mean, one of the better tight ends in football. Going forward, free agency of 2016, $64 million in cap space, but there's a lot of major free agents they have. I mean, Mike Tolbert, who I'm very biased, is one of my favorite players in the NFL. Thomas Davis, Luke Kuechly, and of course Cam Newton. Real quickly looking at 2016 free agency because I like looking ahead of things. How do you think it's going to shake out?
well, they'll obviously give Cam Newton a big contract extension, or hit him with the franchise tag if they don't. But my gut says that he'll get an extension sometime this offseason. That's obviously going to be the number one priority. And then obviously Luke Kuechly is the other kind of the quarterback of the defense, so you imagine that they'll lock him up with another big deal. Pretty much those are the two cornerstones of the team right now. So obviously 2016 is going to be a big free agent year, and I mean really that's why they're not going out at this point or at any other offseason and hurting an already damaged cap situation by adding more bloated deals from other teams' players, is because they have their own guys coming up. These two big franchise cornerstones that are big deals, and they're going to obviously give. I think both of those guys will get extended. Davis is an interesting case because he's he's become such an important part of the defense. He's kind of sometimes I really think watch their tape, and he's just as good of a player as Kuechly is, and doesn't get as much national love for it, but it's because he's older. But and obviously Davis is a very inspirational figure, with his 3 ACL tears. Incredibly, he's still playing and playing at such a high level too. So I think I have a feeling that they'll get something done with him as well. He probably won't be too expensive because he'll be older at that point. But I'm sorry to say, but I bet of all those guys, I bet Tolbert's the one that's obviously not back. That's I'm sorry, Matt. I see you hanging your head there, but. He really doesn't have much of a role as a running back anymore. Cam Newton's already a pretty good goal line presence, so I think they'll be just fine without him. And unless it's like a super cheap deal that he comes back for, which hey, that could happen too.
Yeah, you mentioned not going after big trades, and that's one thing that you have to give credit to Gettleman because, I mean, when he came in, Panthers cap situation was just bad. So to get them back under the cap is a huge thing going forward. They did make some offseason additions. I mean, you have to be excited about bringing back Ted Ginn, and they added Jarrett Boykin, who actually just had a down year in 2014 with the Packers, but 2013 saw some signs that he could be a decent number 3 wide receiver. Maybe they look into Greg Jennings, who obviously feels like he can pull a prank that people are
God.
expecting and make a big deal out of. And how did you enjoy that Greg Jennings prank?
I was the annoying guy on Twitter last night that was like, telling everybody like, why are you doing this? Why are you falling into this trap? It was, I mean, everybody knew that's what it was, and still I see people tweeting, I'm refreshing Jennings, spork or whatever. I didn't even know what the hell the video is. I'd never heard of it until last night. They're like, I'm refreshing it to see what it is. I'm like, why? Like, why do you care this much? And honestly, normally I'm not the guy. I'm not the tell you how to tweet guy. But come on, like, why were we? What did we really like? My whole timeline was Greg Jennings, and it was like the most obvious prank ever. And even if it wasn't a prank, who cares? It's not like it was like midnight, right, or 1 a.m. East Coast time. I was like, come on, go to bed.
Yeah,
Go to
and I
bed.
mean, there was so much obvious in the fact that it was a prank. I mean, he said he was going to announce it at 10 p.m. Pacific time, which translates to 1 a.m.
Yeah.
Eastern, April Fool's Day. There was not a single reporter sharing anything on it.
Mm-hmm.
And but I mean, I will give him credit for this. People still went for it, and I think because he was talking about Score, some other video site, he brought great endorsement for them because I think the website crashed.
Oh yeah, and don't think that Jennings wasn't making a little cash off that.
Oh,
I'm sure he got some scratch for it, and just to be honest, Greg Jennings was the most relevant person on the internet there for a good 3 hours, and that hasn't happened since like 2010. So good on him. Good for you, Greg. I don't begrudge him one bit. I begrudge everybody else that. And hey, I mean, I was right there tweeting about Greg Jennings at 1 a.m. Eastern time too. So I guess I'm not much better than anybody else.
That's the most excited Twitter has ever been about an average wide receiver in his 30s.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, it was crazy. It's not like we were talking about Ndamukong Suh signing or whatever. This was just a middle of the road guy. Like, how could it really be that exciting? It just shows you how sick we are about football.
It does. It really was a strange psychological experiment that showed a deep darkness and obsession of Twitter.
Yes, it did. But hey, good for Greg.
Speaking of obsessions and darkness, well, Carolina Panthers, they had a need at left tackle, so what better solution than to bring in good old the blind side Michael Oher, who, I mean, after that movie came out of his journey to NFL and what he's gone through, he's just been he's been an all-pro every. I'm sorry, I was reading that wrong. He's been bad, very, very bad.
Yeah, no, I mean, he had a good couple of years at right tackle there for a minute with the Ravens, but that was like 6 or 6. How many years has he been in the league? I don't even know, but I mean, that was like 6 years ago that he was even like a passable player. Then they moved him to left tackle. That obviously didn't work out. Moved him back to right tackle, and then they obviously won a Super Bowl ring, but he was a liability. They let him go to Tennessee, where he was an even bigger liability. I'm pretty sure he got. I think he played himself out of a starting job, or was only still starting because they had injuries there. But yeah, it's kind of a gross addition. It's a lot. I know there are some fans out there that want to convince themselves it's an upgrade, but it's really a lateral move from Byron Bell to Michael Oher at this point. Oher is just a bigger name and has the Super Bowl ring and was drafted by the Ravens, so I think people want to trick themselves into thinking he's still like at least an average starter, but he's not.
Yeah, and we do actually have footage of Michael Oher's last practice, so we'll go to that now. Now, I won't say whether or not this is from a movie, but I think it accurately represents his last practice.
And there's Cam.
Yeah, and there we go. That pretty much accurately describes Michael Orr where he is now.
Right, he's come full circle in many ways.
But you also mentioned that people are considering this as an upgrade. And we were talking about this before the show. I mean, it's like if I'm in the ocean, I'm alone in the ocean. I don't have a float, but then a log comes along. Yes, it's an upgrade, but I'm still alone in the ocean, and I'm screwed. That's where the Panthers are at left tackle. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to be optimistic, which I'll do if some Panthers faithful are out there watching, I mean, they're not any worse than they were last year. and like I said, it's definitely not an upgrade. I mean, Orr is not a good player. He's a backup caliber guy at this point. He's one of those tackles that he moves really well. He has good feet, but he doesn't really have confidence in his hands or his functional strength, which is a problem. So yeah, he's not a left tackle, but they didn't have a left tackle last year, and they still went to the playoffs in a bad division, I guess. So they're just as bad as they were last year, like you said.
I like the optimism. That's always good. We need more of it.
Was that even optimism? I don't even know if that qualifies.
It's gonna have to do.
That's the best I can do. Hey, they got Jonathan Martin though too.
We talked about the offensive tackle depth. You got more with Jonathan Martin, and I tweeted you this a little bit earlier in the week or last week, whatever. Ian Rappaport really loves the additions.
Yeah, well, that's all I needed to hear. Yeah, Martin's another one that's obviously he's a liability who comes with a. It's funny they got two guys who aren't good and have like highly public backstories. One is a bit more inspirational. The other is a bit more the bully gate thing. I don't know, but that's whatever. I don't hold that against Martin, but he's obviously another one who's probably just a backup. Hopefully. They had a right tackle, Mike Remmers, come along pretty well at the end of last year, kind of a guy who came out of nowhere who started for them. You got to hope that he beats out Martin for that right tackle job and continues playing as well as he did kind of down the stretch last year. If not,
really hope. Hope.
Yeah, like really cross those fingers, people.
Obviously with those additions, I mean, I think it's fairly easy to say the needs of wide receiver and offensive tackle still remain.
Yeah, absolutely. Offensive tackle it's going to be a priority. I don't know where they're really going to get one at this point, and we'll talk about the draft later. But yeah, offensive tackle, wide receiver, I think are still the two biggest needs on the team. General playmakers on offense too. Again, we can talk about the draft at some point, but yeah, running back is probably a place they're going to look to as well. They just need to score more points. That offense is not good. It's not good enough.
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned the wide receiver position. I mean, they had the third fewest 25-plus pass yard plays last season, which they didn't have any playmakers on that offense. Poor Cam.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, and he's got 10-year-old sports writers out there criticizing him. That guy can't get any help. That was really funny. That was one of the more humorous things I've seen in a while. It just shows you there. It's a beautiful time to be alive. When you got 10-year-olds out here giving those kind of hot takes. Man, it's a good. We're in quite the era of sports writing.
Well, I would definitely say we are. I mean, especially with Jay Mariotti coming back and some of the stuff Peter King has done recently. What a time to be alive in the sports world.
It really is. We're all blessed to be here, I guess.
So you mentioned the draft. I mean, obviously, I mean, offensive tackle, wide receiver are big needs. I mean, looking at offensive tackle at 25, it's not a great class. I mean, I do love Leal Collins, but it's possible he's not there. What possible names do you think they could see in the first round or second round to upgrade at that position?
I think I'm higher on Andrus Pete than some of draft Twitter is, and that's fine. I think that if he was there at 25, and you do see, I feel like he's not going to be, but you do see some mock drafts that have Pete going at 25. That would be great. I think that would be a really nice pick. He's just so physically dominant, and he's so big that I think he'll get away with some of the flaws that you see that you saw in college. And I mean, like I said, he'll probably always be limited because he's a little technically flawed and he's a little bit passive at times. I think he'll never reach like the ceiling that his physical profile says he would. But at the same time, I think he's too talented to not at least be like an average starting left tackle, which, as we talked about, they would greatly benefit from just an average left tackle. So yeah, I think Pete would be a great pick if he's there at 25. The rest of the tackles, like outside of Collins, who I think also won't be there, I don't see like any of the other ones other than Jake Fisher is the only other one that I would probably take there. Like Humphreys, I know he's probably better than some of the other guys like Flowers or whatever, but I think he played at like 280 at Miami. That kind of worries me whether he can be a left tackle in the NFL at that weight, and just some of the things I see on film I'm just not like super excited about. But Jake Fisher is intriguing if he's still there, but with his athleticism that he displayed at the combine, I feel like he's not going to be. So it's really tough for me to say in the first round that they can get a left tackle because a lot of those guys I think are going to be off the board, which makes me think that they'll probably turn to another position at 25.
Yeah, and Cam Newton just heard the words "average offensive tackle," and he's getting it tattooed on his back. He's really excited.
Yeah. Definitely. That would go a long way from what they've had the last 2 years or last year.
And you mentioned Jake Fisher. I mean, that's a name like, I mean, in the season, kind of quiet. I mean, Andrew Pete was actually one of the bigger names, but his name is quieted down. People have moved on to guys like Eric Flowers, DJ Humphreys. But I mean, Jake Fisher, I mean, his athleticism, he's the guy that I think is really starting to grow and pushing his way up into the first round.
Oh yeah, totally. And I mean, guys with that kind of ability just don't slip very far. And I think his tape towards the end of the season was better than the first. I think he just displays the movement skills that a team that's based on running the ball with an athletic quarterback that is going to really cover it. Excuse me. Yeah, so I see Fisher as a guy that would be well worth that pick if he was there.
Definitely. I mean, even as there's reports about his workouts going on right now. I mean, was earlier that people were saying in positional drills at the combine and workouts, he's been looking great. So it's definitely on the rise. And really at 25, I mean, if you asked 3 months ago, people would have said, no way, that's just complete reach. It makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah, it does. Excuse me. Yeah, it does. This process, all this Panthers left tackle talk is starting to make me sick. But yeah, I think it's a pick that would make a lot of sense. They could use a developmental guy. They don't want to just plug the hole for the short term. They want to get somebody who's going to stick. And Jake, I mean, Fisher reminds me a lot of Jordan Gross, honestly, like a guy who could play right and left tackle. And we know, and he was Gross was pretty athletic on the field. Not the biggest guy, a little slight for the position, and Fisher's going to kind of be hit and miss with how like thick he is or whatever. But I think those two, there could be a lot of good parallels between them.
And we have spent a lot of time talking about left tackles, so we will move down and talk about wide receivers. I mean, obviously reception, perception. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But looking at this wide receiver class, obviously it's another deep class. I mean, from rounds 1 through, you can go on and on. Who are some names that jump out to you either on day 1 or day 2?
Day 1 guys, I would be totally fine if they took Devin Smith at 25. He's one of the guys that I wrote up. I'm a big fan of his. Honestly, and I'm not saying he's like the best wide receiver in the class because obviously he's not, but he's one of my favorite players in the draft class. Just the way just studying the process of that I've gone through with studying him has been such a fun one that I think he would really be an intriguing guy. I think he's like a T.Y. Hilton sort of player that I think can come in right away and be a deep threat, but also I believe he has the nuances in his game to develop into a complete wide receiver. So, and I know people want to make like Philip Dorsett or whatever, T.Y. Hilton or Tyler Lockett, but I think Smith is actually the one that compares the most favorably to him. And then I look at some other guys like Nelson Aguilar. I think would be great. I would take him at 25 as well. He's another one of my favorite guys. He's my fourth wide receiver right now. I like him better than I like Devontae Parker. So Aguilar, if he was there, would be a fine pick. And I think he's kind of, I thought when they were looking at Greg Jennings, that made sense. Get a guy who's kind of an underneath threat, but also a good player with the ball in his hands. And I think Aguilar is like the younger version of Jennings, like, Jennings circa 2000, 2009, 2008 or whatever. I think that would be a really great addition. That's exactly what they need with Kelvin Benjamin on the other side, kind of more reliable, more complete route runner sort of player after the catch. So I think that would be a natural fit, whereas Smith just gives them the straight-up speed. And then on day two, there's a lot of guys. There's a lot of interesting guys that I would look at there. If a Lockett fell, that they could go that way with the. I'm not the biggest Tyler Lockett fan, but I think that if he was there, it would give him something to think about. I probably don't see too much value at that, like just in the way I think the board is going to play out in my mind. I don't really see too much value at that second spot for the Panthers, so I think that they should go wide receiver in the first, and then maybe wait, or if they don't, maybe wait around until the third, where they could maybe get a guy like a Devontae Davis or a DeAndre Smelter, because I don't really see, just in the way I think the board's going to play out, I don't really see like who's going to be there in the late second round that would really be too intriguing to me, just off the top of my head.
Yeah, and you mentioned Smith. He's not your top wide receiver, but if you're talking about a natural fit, filling a need for a team that needs playmakers, someone who can go over the top, give Cam Newton someone to aim for deep, that's perfect for that fit, for opening up the offense more, helping out Benjamin, and helping that team put up more points.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they need speed so bad. Just think about who they had last year. I mean, Benjamin obviously can be a vertical threat just because of his size, but he's not fast. Jericho Cotchery, come on. Like, he's like 34 years old at this point. Like, no, he's not a vertical threat. The best that they have is Philly Brown, who showed some nice moments last year as an undrafted free agent, but I think, come on, you're not going to let him affect your draft plans. And then I've heard people say, like, oh, they shouldn't take Devin Smith at 25 because they just brought back Ted Ginn. And if there's anybody out there in the NFL that's letting Ted Ginn affect your draft plans, I have to seriously question what you're doing.
Yeah, I'll have to cancel my shares of my Ted Ginn Jr. jerseys and fantasy value because I was really excited. He was going to be that big play guy that was never happening.
Well, he did. He showed well in his last trip in Carolina, but I mean, it was probably the best year of his career was his 1 year there. But obviously, you're not banking on that. That's not something you're going to take to happen again.
And you also mentioned Aguilar, and I think he may not be the huge vertical play guy, but I mean, talking about an outstanding route runner, someone who can work over the middle and inside, that would also be an excellent addition.
Yeah, Aguilar would be he'd be great. That would really be tremendous. And actually, I don't think we talked about second round guys. A few of them I missed off the top of my head, but like if Trey McBride is there in the second round, I think that's a great pick. He's my 8th wide receiver right now. He's really a guy that I think could develop into a star, sort of in like a better version of Pierre Garçon if everything works out just right. Despite the small school background, I think he's another guy who can get vertical, can make contested catches, and really show some good route running ability. So McBride would be a really good pick in the second round.
And looking at Carolina's other needs, what else jumps out to you of areas they need to improve in order to get back to be in that playoff hunt and help out Cam Newton or help out the defense?
I think they need a running back. They need another running back for sure. I mean, Jonathan Stewart, I love the guy, and he played really, really well last season when he finally got to be the bell cow back, but we all know about his injury history. And this is a deep running back draft, so I think In the second, maybe third round, they should take kind of a best player available sort of proposition there. If there's a really good running back sticking around, I think that would be a nice pick. And of course, they can go fourth or fifth round and still probably get a quality guy who can contribute just because the draft is so deep there. And they have needs on defense. Now, personally, I'll get up on my soapbox here about the Panthers' defensive needs. Like, I think that if you are saying that the Panthers should use their first pick on defense, I think you're just trying too hard to be like Dave Gettleman, because that's what he's going to do, and it won't make. I mean, and I don't begrudge him for it because he's been a very good general manager so far, and I actually really like the way he's built the team and everything he does. So I'm not questioning him, but he's going to take that best player available, and if he does, and if it's a defensive player, I still won't like it. I still think they need to add offensive playmakers, but they do need some secondary help, although I think that they're pretty good at cornerback with Josh Norman and Ben Wickery, if they could add another body there. But again, I think that's a second, third round sort of target. And they could always use more bodies on the defensive line, losing Greg Hardy to Dallas. I think that they of course will need to add some more edge rushers, despite the fact that they have Charles Johnson, they have Coney Ely already in the fold. I think they still need to add some more bodies there.
And looking at Coney Ely, what he did last year, what do you think he can do just in his second season, getting past the rookie wall and with the full offense?
I think he can start. There's Charlie is chiming in on Coney Ely. But I think that Ely can start and they can get away with it. He's not. I don't think he's ever going to be a top tier player, the caliber of guy that he was as a college prospect. But I think that at the same time, I think that he can start and give you like maybe an 8-sack season with guys paying more attention to Charles Johnson. He showed some flashes in his rookie year, definitely some downs. But he was pretty good in a few games, so I think he can either be a valuable part of a rotation, and hopefully, if it all breaks out right, he can be the starter at one of those defensive end spots opposite of Charles Johnson.
And just being a good player, I mean, on a team with Star Lotulelei, I mean, with Charles Johnson, with Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis, right. I am perfectly happy with that.
Yeah, that's the thing. They have so many other good players, and I think Kawan Short is really kind of the undersold guy on that defensive front. He's a role player, but there's really nothing wrong with that when he can give you such great pressure from the interior. I mean, he's a true disruptor at that defensive tackle spot. So their teams will give him a lot of attention, and I think that Ely will benefit from that a lot.
Definitely, and Gettleman, he's done a solid job. I mean, he's definitely helped that defense. But I think it's time I make an executive decision. Gettleman is now out. You were the Carolina Panthers general manager. You have full control over the draft. You are on the clock at 25. What are you doing with the pick?
Well, like I said, if Pete is there, I think I'm going to make that pick. But I'm going to assume that he's gone because that's what I think will happen. Oh, wow, maybe I'm not ready for this. Okay, let me say this. I think that if Todd Gurley's there, I think we'll make that pick. If he's there at 25, and I think that Gettleman might do the same thing, just because, like I said, he is such a best grade available drafter. I think that he'll see Gurley's talent and just clearly feel like he's the best player on the board. And I think that really, while running backs are kind of a devalue, it's their devalued position. We all know that. I think when you get a game changer like Todd Gurley in there, I think that would really help this offense. I mean, you saw the tremendous leap that the team took when Jonathan Stewart started playing well, from when they had this like haphazard, like mixed running game with splitting carries between D'Angelo and Jonathan and throwing Mike Tolbert in there and some other random guys. That never worked. The offense was always off schedule, and when it was based around doing that while also having like Cam Newton as a read option effect, that never worked. It never sustained offense. So I think that if Gurley's on the board, I think you make that pick, and I think you feel really, really good about it. Now, again, I'll throw out a qualifier. If he's not there, then I think I would take Devin Smith at 25, and I feel pretty confident that he will be there.
Definitely, I think this all, I mean, with Gurley, this all goes back to adding explosive playmakers to this defense, putting more points on the board, and Gettleman's best player available strategy. And while that may be more of a surprise, 'cause, I mean, some consider, I mean, Arizona Cardinals, some other teams inside the top 20 with a big running back need. But if he's there, I mean, that actually would be a good pick to add to that offense.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, hey, I think he's the type of running back that can succeed behind a bad offensive line, which I think we've already established that they'll probably have a bad offensive line. He ran behind a pretty good one at Georgia, but I think he showed the fearlessness in the backfield that a running back of his caliber, or that a running back's going to need to succeed when getting hit behind the line of scrimmage. So, yeah, I like that pick a lot, and like I said, it gives him kind of. They're obviously, if in this case, they're not going to be adding a premier, ready right away sort of weapon to the passing game, so they need more bodies at running back, and I think Gurley is the type of guy to do it. And if you don't want to play him right away, I think you've got a running back in Stewart that you can lean on while he's healthy.
And I think that's another point you brought up that's just great. I mean, because Gurley will be returning from that torn ACL, so with Jonathan Stewart, you allow Gurley to work through the paces, just get his body back to 100%, and then he can come in and uplift that offense.
Right, so then when Stewart gets hurt, you bring in Gurley from not
There you
being
go.
hurt anymore.
And
So hopefully it all works out. It could all work out and blow up in everybody's face with all the injuries, but it could also work out seamlessly.
And all of this while we were talking, Jonathan Stewart was hurt and then re-injured himself and then re-injured himself again.
Oh, poor guy. He's so good, though. I mean, he's such an incredible runner that you just wish that his body could take the punishment, but it seems pretty clear that he really can't.
Yeah. All right. So for this scenario, we'll say you got Todd Gurley with 25th pick. Now moving on to the second round. Still have needs offensive tackle, wide receiver. Where are you going?
I don't really see a ton of depth at the offensive tackle class that would really be appealing at that second round pick. So I think I'm going to go with receiver here, and I'm going to assume that Trey McBride is on the board, and I'm going to pull the trigger there. I think he's the type of guy who has the potential. And I think Nelson Aguilar already is that guy that you could step in right away as a really great route runner, as a great underneath threat. And I think McBride has the potential to do that. So, while also being kind of a guy who could take the top off the defense. So I want him to be the long-term starter opposite Kelvin Benjamin. So and I'm crossing my fingers that the Panthers' recent trend with second-round wide receivers reverses itself. So I sign me up for Trey McBride in the second round.
I'm going to put it in the call. I'm going to have Ted Thompson's success with drafting wide receiver in the second round be shifted to Carolina for the season. So there you go. That should help out.
That would be really nice of you, Matt. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been done, and Cam Newton and you and Carolina will be very happy.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, we still haven't done anything to add to the offensive line, so that is still a problem. But like I said, I don't see it. I don't see it, a lot of guys in that second round range that are going to help them right away.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But, all right, so we've added Todd Gurley, you added Trey McBride. This offense is already going to be clicking, bigger numbers going forward. We're now in the third round to end day two. Where are you going?
And this is kind of a hopeful pick. I'm hoping that this guy is still around. Cedric Ogbuehi from Texas A&M. I think that if he was there in the third round, I think that's a good pick for them. Another injured guy, so this might not be the most immediate impact class. But if he falls this far because of some of his playing concerns, like where does he play in the NFL, position-wise, what is he? He had some pretty tape his last year at college. And obviously there's medical concern. He's another player who tore an ACL. He's recovering. So we're hoping that pushes him down the board into the third round. But again, I think this is a guy, a developmental player, that while you have a season of some combination of Mike Remmers, Michael Oher, and Jonathan Martin starting a tackle, this is a guy who can learn and eventually be a starter for you down the line. So if he's there, I think that's a good pick.
You must have a lot of confidence in your doctors and medical staff.
I do. I don't know why. I don't know why, but I guess they helped. They help Thomas Davis come back from all these injuries. Maybe they can do the same for the guys.
Now, all right, so you've added Agbuehi, you've added Trey McBride, and you've added Todd Gurley. Now, the one thing, I mean, Agbuehi obviously it's going to take time for him to return from that injury and develop to get to the NFL level. So you are going to be likely starting Michael Oher at left tackle. How are you feeling about that?
Well, I'm not feeling good, but we were bad at tackle last year, so we'll do it. We'll go one more round, I guess. I don't know. I mean, like I said, nobody's going to step in right away. Well, I mean, a second or third round pick is honestly as bad as Michael Oher is. That second or third round pick is not going to come in and unseat him right away. So why bother really prioritizing the position if you miss out on a guy in round one? And like I said, I think they miss out on Pete and Collins and everything else, and all those other guys in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. I mean, we put these high it's not even on quarterbacks anymore. We put such high expectations on players of every position. So expecting a second, third round, even fourth round offensive tackle just to plant or and start at left tackle, that's a lot to ask for.
Oh, yeah, totally. And you see that a lot with the way people cover the draft. They're like, oh, well, they didn't take a left tackle in the fourth round. Like, now they're going to be starting Michael Oher. I'm like, well, you know what? If they took a left tackle in the fourth round, they'd probably still be starting Michael Oher because that rookie's not going to come in right away and be so good if he was drafted in the fourth round that he's going to come in and become a starter right away. That's probably not going to happen.
Now, I must say, as a admirer of Cam Newton and a lover of Cam and of someone who loves Cam Newton, thank you for helping him. Thank you. It's very much appreciated and needed.
Well, yeah, they really need the help on offense, and I think they should target playmakers in the first few rounds of the draft for sure. They need to do it.
Now, we mentioned earlier about Cam Newton being a free agent at the end of the year. You mentioned franchise tag, hopefully a contract extension. There was a report out a few weeks ago that it was unlikely at this time that Newton reaches an extension with Carolina over the summer, but can't close the door on that completely. How much do you think Cam Newton is worth for the Carolina Panthers?
I think he's worth more than what Andy Dalton or Colin Kaepernick got last offseason. I don't think that should even really be a conversation. I mean, he's way better than those two players are, and I think he'll get a deal in the area of what Jay Cutler got, which obviously looks like a bad contract now, but or like maybe even I don't know. It's hard to say because the money is always going up for quarterbacks, but he's going to get a big deal. I mean, he's probably not on the caliber, maybe even of the caliber that Ben Roethlisberger just got from the Steelers. Honestly, I mean, I think he's worth whatever he wants. He's been a transformative figure both on and off the field for the Panthers. I mean, I know he's always like controversial or whatever because people are stupid, but he's been a guy who's brought them the franchise quarterback that they've really never had. The best guy they ever had before him was Jake Delhomme, and he was solid for many years before that catastrophic fall off. But I mean, this team was sinking before Cam came around, and not only that, like he made them relevant. Nobody cared about the Panthers even in the slightest bit before Cam Newton showed up. So I think he's worth whatever he wants. He's a really good quarterback that has been kind of unfairly criticized for a lot of things and put in a really bad situation too. I mean, he's never had a great supporting cast, and his coaching staff has never been very good. They've always used this jumbled approach to the running back position, which keeps the offense off schedule. And the same thing goes for the way they've continued to use him as a read option threat, despite the fact that he's good more of an improvisational scrambler and as a thrower. They've still kept him in this role, so hopefully they can kind of grow out of that this year. Now that he's going to be healthy going into the season, so I think he's worth whatever he wants. I think he's worth it.
I will say, thankfully, the Panthers drafted Cam Newton instead of when I at the time said they should have drafted Blaine Gabbert. That would have gone horribly.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, hey, you weren't alone there.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, one thing with Cam Newton, I mean, he does so much criticism, and it's just ridiculous. But I mean, I get fans short for fanatics, but man, some people it's just terrible. But I mean, if you put him in a situation where he has weapons, like in Detroit, he would thrive.
Yeah, totally. I mean, even in a lesser situation like that, like you talk about what when people. There was a time once upon a time that people really believed that Colin Kaepernick was better than Cam Newton, and I mean that's kind of a little bit of revisionist analysis on my part, but I guess I can do that because I'm a fan. But anyways, I think that if Newton was playing with the guys that Kaepernick was playing with 2 years ago when Kaepernick broke out, I think they would have had really similar seasons. Also playing with Jim Harbaugh and I mean Crabtree when he was in his prime, Anquan Bolden with a running back like a tough running back like Frank Gore behind a good offensive line. I think even like that's not the greatest supporting cast in the world, but it's better than anything Cam has now or has ever had.
And Jim Harbaugh would have adored Cam Newton.
Oh yeah, the Panthers have had Chudzinski, who was like way too off the wall with his weird approach to the offense and never really wanting to run the ball, and then now they have Mike Shula, who's just nah. That's all I'll say about that. Just the nah wave. Nah.
Good old Mike Shula.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say put Carolina scenario. They aren't able to extend Cam Newton during the season or summer. So he hits free agency. Obviously, in that situation, you probably franchise tag him, which is going to be in the 20 million range. It's fine. But hypothetical, let's say he hits the open market. How much do you think he could get, given the rising salary cap?
I don't want to talk about that. But like I said, I think some team would give him a lot of money. I mean, they would pay him like a top 3 quarterback if he was to ever hit the open market. I'm pretty confident in that. I think Russell Wilson. There's talk that Russell Wilson and Andrew Luck could demand guaranteed contracts. I think that if Newton hit the open market, I think he could demand one of those two, just because he's still young too. He was raw coming out of school, and he's still pretty young. Like I said, he's about to come off his first contract, but he's obviously one of the more talented passers in the league. So I feel pretty confident that he could garner top 3 quarterback money if he hit the open market. I don't think he's going to get that in Carolina, but if he hit the open market, I think he could demand that.
Definitely. This is a side note, but I mean, the newer thing we're seeing are quarterbacks striving for guaranteed contracts is going to be something very interesting to watch with how teams manage that. Players try and get it going forward.
Well, I mean, just think about it. Like if Andrew Luck wanted a guaranteed contract, I mean, if he walked into Indianapolis and was like, I want a guaranteed contract, what are they going to say? Like, they can't say no. Because then eventually, I mean, like, he would just be like, I'm not signing for anything but a guaranteed contract. What are they going to do? Let him walk? And I mean, obviously, you can keep franchising, but that becomes prohibitive after a while. Eventually, that situation would come to a head. I think that that's a very I don't know anything about NFL contracts and money and stuff like that, but I think that there's a real possibility that actually does happen with some of these young quarterbacks.
Absolutely. I mean, if Indianapolis said no, there's going to be probably 31 NFL teams, because even at that point, Green Bay will be like, we might as well just see what's up. They will offer Luck a blank contract, say, however much you want to put on their guaranteed, go ahead. We'll sign it when you're done.
Right, like you don't think the Jets or somebody with a lot of cap room that don't have a quarterback, you don't think that they would, if Andrew Luck was or Russell Wilson was on the open market, I absolutely think they would totally offer that blank check, like you said. Oh, make it all guaranteed, baby.
In New York.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and as they should. I mean, if you don't have a quarterback, it's tough to win in this league. So yeah, I agree.
And one thing we have talked about, the work you've done, reception perception, hashtag reception perception.
Thank you.
First, how did it start?
Well, it all started last offseason. about in June or July, I debuted the methodology, but behind the scenes, I'd been working on it really kind of since I started writing about football, because I think in this era, if you're kind of a nobody like me, and I mean I am a nobody, definitely was a nobody back then. When if you want to stand out, you have to have like your own sort of thing. Because it's tough to make it as just a guy writing about sports when you aren't a former player or a coach or anything like that, especially if you want to be analytical or break down film. Why should anybody care unless you have something different to bring to the table? So I wanted to kind of come out with my own sort of thing, and that's how reception perception, like the idea of it started. And honestly, like I was supposed to go back to school to get a PhD. After I graduated, after I finished undergrad, and I actually decided not to do it to pursue this. And so it's kind of like approaching football in a very like sort of academic, data-driven, methodological approach. So it kind of appeases both sides of my brain. So that's kind of how the idea came about. And I just was like, I've always loved the wide receiver position, and I wanted to find a way to analyze each and every part of it as its own little compartment, and then also have it, I like to say that it strings together the story of how a wide receiver plays. So that's kind of a long-winded answer as to how it got started.
And I mean, you talked about, where it's been now. You didn't go for the PhD, but now you're writing reception perception for the Washington Post.
Yeah, man. I think I know how they found me. I'm pretty sure I know like the interconnectivity of Twitter, how the writer that hit me up to come on board there. I think I know how they found me, and yeah. So I was very excited to hear about that. It's I still live outside of DC. I grew up here, so it's been a cool experience to kind of write for like my hometown organization, I guess.
Definitely. What can we look forward to coming in the future with your reception perception work? First with the Washington Post, and then overall.
Washington Post, I'm still kind of in talks with what we're going to do now that free agency has kind of died down, because I wrote up a few guys like Randall Cobb from your Packers. I wrote him up for the Washington Post, and I did an Andre Johnson piece for them. Now that free agency's died down, and I kind of was put on hold because March Madness was really all the big thing, especially because the particular blog that I write for at the Washington Post is a stats analytics blog, and so they were obviously doing a lot with March Madness. So I'm still kind of waiting on what's going to happen from there. But I know they do want to contribute. They do want me to contribute regularly. So as long as everything keeps going, I will continue doing stuff there. And as far as what I'm doing right now, I'm just charting away. I'm trying to get about somewhere in the neighborhood of like 80 to 100 receivers charted and we're making headway, man. Now that I've been doing this for just about a year, all this charting stuff, I can really get it done a lot quicker, but which is good because it's time consuming. I'm putting out a book publication that I'll be running through my site, which is thebackyardbanter.com, and there's a project preview page already up there if you'd like to go look at that. I'm pretty much going to have all the data, all these route charts for every receiver that I chart, every receiver that is basically anybody that's relevant in the NFL today, as well as a few draft prospects. I'm going to have a chart on them, and I have this exclusive reception dash rate versus coverage, contested catch conversion rate. I'm going to have all that in the book, and I'll have there'll obviously be words written up there that I write for you to read as well. So that is something that really you can look forward to, and that's going to hopefully be coming out in July, in the summer of this year.
Outstanding. We will have a huge, giant, I will have it bolded, I will make the word letters as big as possible in the description. People check out because it is a must. And before we go, first of all, I finish up with where people can follow you on Twitter, but also when you are watching for these guys for reception perception, what are you specifically looking for?
Well, to answer the first question, you can follow me on Twitter at MattHarmon_BYB, and use the hashtag reception perception. So you can follow all the reception perception based tweets that I'm always kind of throwing out things when I'm charting or posting articles a lot there too. But yeah, as far as what I'm looking for, I mean, obviously I'm looking for context, how these receivers play, but I'm mainly stripping things down to did you do your job or did you not? Did you get open on this play? Were you facing man coverage? Were you facing zone coverage? Were you running a post, a corner, a slant, a 9 route? Did you make a contested catch? I mean, I'm looking for everything. Like there's there's a there's a chart or there's a big thing over here that you can't see in my room of just like stacks of paper, and there's a cabinet over there. So basically, I got like 3 papers out, and I'm just charting literally everything that they do. Did you break tackles? So I'm basically looking more. It kind of strips it down, makes it a very quantitative, like success rate versus coverage. Did you get open? Did you beat the cornerback that you were lined up against, or did you find that soft spot in the zone? So I think it gives you an accurate picture of exactly what they are, and then because I am a writer and I explain things, then I think in articles is where I can dive into the technical aspects of what I know of the position. Like they had a poor grade against, they had a poor success rate against press coverage. Well, are they not good at releasing off the line of scrimmage? Do they waste movements? Do they take that hop motion? And that's what I do within articles. But when I'm charting, I'm really looking at just a stripped down approach. Did you do your job? Did you make it work? I kind of like almost less of a scout's perspective and more of a coach's perspective. With did you win? Did you do your team well, or however you want to say that?
Awesome. I'm just looking at the whole wide receiver puzzle, all the little it's like a machine, just looking at every single individual component, how it works, why it works, everything involving wide receivers. Just incredible work.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate that, and I'm honestly, it really is very. I don't mean to sound like fake emotional about it. It really, really is a very humbling and grateful. I'm very grateful that people do enjoy it so much, because this is just something that I worked up in my 1-bedroom apartment back in Lynchburg, and here people, it's in the Washington Post, and people like Evan Silva and Matt Waldman are fans of it. And I'm very, very grateful. I really appreciate everybody that supports the series, and we're working for something big here with the book. This will be the first annual edition, and it'll come out every year from now until I guess I die. So hopefully a long time.
Definitely. I mean, everyone just be sure to get that book, and also follow Matt on Twitter. He is just out. I mean, there's pictures and vines of his dog, which are great things to see anyway. But then there's the reception, perception, all the NFL work he does. So at Matt Harmon _BYB. People, follow my man Matt Harmon. All right, and that will do it for the Very Good Sports Podcast, Carolina Panthers edition. This has been Matt and Matt talking Carolina Panthers.